Hey everyone, what's up? I was out and about yesterday and I had a random thought. This just popped up in my mind. Are we ever going to get another Star Wars role-playing game? Are we ever going to get another one? It just does not make sense. What the fuck? So when I got home later that day, I decided to look up Knights of the Old Republic 3. I know it's probably never going to come out, but I wanted to see if any new details surfaced about the game and what it was going to be, and I read an interesting interview with Chris Avellone. It was done by RPG Codex. This happened last summer, and I completely missed it when they first put the interview on their website. So I was reading it, and I'm going to leave a link in the description to the interview. I'm not going to read everything from it, but I'm only going to read a small part, and you're going to see it on the screen. And for those that don't know, Chris Avellone was the lead designer for Star Wars, Knights of the Old Republic 2, The Sith Lords, and he's worked on a bunch of other games, including Planescape Torment, Fallout New Vegas, Alpha Protocol, Icewind Dale, and more. The person that interviewed Chris is called Jedi Master Radic. Jedi Master Radic says, "A few years ago, you said you had an idea for a Star Wars role-playing game set during the Empire era. Could you tell us more about it?" Chris Avellone responded, "Yeah, so that game was set during the dark times of the Republic when everything was falling apart, but there were still a few scattered Jedi lying around. The premise was that you would be one of the Sith and you would go around hunting down and killing Jedi. However, then I read the Dark Horse comic series called Dark Times that was written by Randy Stradley, and that story was far better than any story I could ever come up with. So yeah, that was the premise basically. You would be one of the Imperial agents and or Darth Vader, and then you would just go around hunting down and killing all the Jedi." Now I'm going to read another part of the interview. JMR said, "What was the storyline for the third KOTOR game? What would the player do in the Sith Empire? Was it going to be structured like the first two KOTORs? Prologue, 4 planets, and then the ending? Or something else?" Chris Avellone replied, "So it was going to be a little bit different. So basically, I think I've said this before, but the player would be following Revan's path into the unknown regions. And then he goes very, very deep into the unknown regions and finds the outskirts of the real Sith Empire. And that's a pretty terrifying place. The intention was that it would be structured on a basic level like KOTOR 1 and KOTOR 2. But what would happen is you would have a collection of hubs, but every hub you went to had an additional circuit of hubs that you could choose which ones you optionally wanted to do to complete that hub, or you could do them all. But ultimately there was just a lot more game area in KOTOR 3, just because the Sith Empire was just so fucking big. But yeah, so on some level it was a similar structure, but it was intended to. So one of our designers, Matt McLean, had this idea for Alpha Protocol mission structure, where what would happen is, you would sort of go to a hub, but it wasn't really a hub. It was like a big mission you had to do as an espionage agent. But then there were like 6 surrounding missions, that central mission, and you didn't have to do any of them. But by doing some of those, you would cause a reaction in the main target mission that could even make your job worse or easier. Or you could choose to try and do all of them and let each of them cater to like a speech skill or stealth mission or shoot 'em up mission, and that would cause different reactivity. And I always liked that because I felt like you were being given a larger objective, but you were getting a lot more freedom in how to accomplish it and how to set the stage. So it was easier for your character. And that's kind of the mission structure I would have liked to bring to KOTOR 3 because I thought it was much more intelligent design. So that is all I'm going to read. I encourage you to read the rest of the interview. I will leave a link in the description. Now after I read the interview, I looked up the release dates of Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2. Knights of the Old Republic 1 came out in 2003, and it's going to turn 15 years old next year. I'll be sure to make a video about that. And Knights of the Old Republic 2 came out in 2004. Over 10 years since we had a Star Wars role-playing game. Now I know some of you are going to say, what about the MMORPG, The Old Republic? I'm not talking about the Old Republic, I'm talking about a Star Wars single-player RPG. I know that you can get a continuation of Knights of the Old Republic through Star Wars The Old Republic, the MMORPG, but I am not going to play that. I tried it out a bit because I wanted to see what it's like, but I didn't enjoy it. I don't know why everything has to have a multiplayer component nowadays or a MMORPG. They should have just released another Knights of the Old Republic game or another Star Wars RPG. It could have been done by BioWare or Obsidian. I prefer Obsidian. What I would have done is say, fuck making an MMO, we're going to make Knights of the Old Republic 3 and we're going to give Obsidian way more time, because when they made Knights of the Old Republic 2, they had to rush it out because of deadlines. I would have given them way more time, and imagine that game. Imagine Knights of the Old Republic 3 or a different Star Wars role-playing game made by a competent developer. I know some of you are going to say, well, we have the Old Republic, but fuck the Old Republic. How is that working for you, BioWare? Now, Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2 were critically and commercially successful, so they should have just made another single-player Star Wars role-playing game. I just don't understand it. And Disney owns the rights to Star Wars, and EA did a video last year about the future of Star Wars games, and they've released some info. There's going to be a action-adventure game and a sequel to the Battlefront game that came out last year, and I'm just sitting here thinking, are you fuckers ever going to work on a single-player Star Wars role-playing game? And I don't even trust them to put out a good product, even if some point in the future they decide to release one or to work on one, whenever the fuck, if it ever comes out, I don't think it's going to be good. I can't trust BioWare. If they end up working on another one, imagine what they're going to do nowadays. I've seen some of the products they put out in the past couple of years, and especially now with Mass Effect Andromeda, I don't trust them to put out a good Star Wars RPG if they ever decide to work on another one sometime in the future. And that's a damn shame. There is so much you can do with Star Wars. I can't even get a proper fucking sequel to Star Wars Battlefront 2. I loved Star Wars Battlefront 2, and I was not a fan of the Battlefront game that came out last year. Alright, that's it for this little rambling video. If you haven't read the interview that RPG Codex did with Chris Avallone last year, I will leave a link in the description. I recommend you read it. If you haven't played Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 1 or 2 or both, I recommend you play those games. If you want to leave a comment, go ahead. Let me know what you think about this. Have a great day.